All right. Good morning, everyone. We still have some attendees kind of rolling in here, so I just have a quick intro to get through before we get started. So we'll start with that. So this is Cody Cochran with MBSI WAV, Business Development for Western Canada. MBSI WAV, we're proud to partner up with ICT today to present this webinar. Today's session is going to be an introduction to the new DIN-Rail series of solutions that ICT has just recently released, as well as just some general updates and an overview of the entire platform. Just some quick housekeeping here before we kick off. So this webinar is going to be recorded. So if you have to step away, phone rings, whatever happens, no big deal. We're going to have it recorded. We'll have it uploaded to all of our social media outlets shortly after we're all done here. So our YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook pages, etc. You'll be able to find the recording fairly easily. So if you have any questions or comments as we're rolling along, feel free to drop them in the chat window. We do our best to address them as we move along in the session, but if we don't sweat it. We will get a chance to answer your question at the end of the session. If for some reason we have so many questions and we run out of time, we'll make sure that we follow up personally and get you the information you need. No problems there. So here at MBSI WAV, we're extremely excited to be working with ICT, continuously. We're always speccing in their solutions on our wireless networks. Their solutions really do complement wireless networks, helps providers, integrators, VARs, end users, whomever, provide their networks proper, reliable, and remotely managed power solutions. So MBSI WAV, we can help you when we're doing radio designs, when we're looking at these solutions. We can also implement an ICT solution that's customized for exactly what you need at that specific site. So that goes with the traditional products, the legacy products that ICT has had for years, and this also applies to the new DIN-Rail series that you're going to get introduced to here today. So today, presenting on behalf of ICT will be the one, the only Mr. Brian Klein. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to you and let you do your thing.
Thanks, Cody. Appreciate the intro. Appreciate MBSI WAV putting this on and allowing us to get that message out there in terms of who we are and what we have and where we fit. As Cody mentioned, we'll briefly talk about our portfolio, and nearer to the end, we'll focus in on the new products and primarily at the end there, the new DIN series of products that we've recently released. So without further ado, away we go. So just to bring you up to speed in case you have been living in a cave the past couple of decades about who ICT is. We're the industry-leading DC power conversion company, focusing on all types of communications and industrial power sites all around the world. We are the primary vendor to industry-leading OEMs and channel partners, much like MBSI WAV. We're based in Canada. We're a fully integrated electronics design house. We do our own product development and testing and design and manufacturing and support all of that right here just east of Vancouver, BC. We're looking at developing solutions that help customers overcome their challenges, and these three are sort of the key crux buzzwords that we like to use: providing the highest quality, best value, and lowest total cost of ownership. So the amount of money that you're going to spend on an ICT product to the end of its life will be the least expensive power solution that is out there in the market. And our mission is providing intelligent, connected, and highly reliable power devices to meet the world's need for wireless voice, data, fixed broadband, all that good stuff. So that's who we are. And as I mentioned briefly there, some of our customers, when we were created in the mid-'80s, we primarily focused on two-way LMR radios. We did that for about a decade and a half. And then into the 2000s, we really started to focus on the wireless broadband and products that we could supply into there. And we were the first adopters of intelligent technology, and we've just expanded from that point on. So LANs, WANs, fixed wireless broadband, all those markets that you in attendance here obviously are playing around in, that's where we focus, and that's where the crux of our new product development and design, customer interaction, and new product releases, that's where we're all focused. pretty much anything that's got an on-off switch and you want to have more power and control and quality and reliability than just a wall wart that you stick into the outlet in the wall and pray that everything goes well. That's where ICT fits. And a lot of these brands here and the brands that you will be utilizing that has an on switch that requires some form of power, primarily DC, we partner with and we pair with and we complement each other. And we are the go-to power solution for the bulk of these products. So again, if you're looking for a high quality solution that's, again, more than just crush fingers and pray when you plug something into the wall and hope nothing goes wrong and there isn't a power outage or a lightning strike or whatever it might be, then that's where ICT can be a good fit. And the reason why is that we, in the bulk of our products, utilize remote power management. So the benefits to this are overall decreasing your maintenance costs and operating expenses by avoiding unnecessary site visits. So if something goes wrong at site, either A, you might not know about it if you're going with another power solution, or B, if something does go wrong and you are somehow able to get a heads up about it, oftentimes you've got to put two fellas in a truck or a skidoo or a helicopter and whip them off to the bush at time and a half on the middle of the night on Saturday and flip a switch and turn a knob or whatever it might be to get your system back up and running. We can do that with a simple push of a button or a click of a mouse from your iPhone, from your laptop, from your tablet, whatever it might be. So we're looking at increasing network performance with the high QoS. As I mentioned, we're able to monitor all the critical devices. So anything that is connected to our power system, you will have full visibility, monitoring, and control of those devices. So not only do we intelligently monitor and control the power solution, but any device that's downstream of that we are up and running. Status alarms, in many cases, you simply just, like I mentioned, need to push a button or click a mouse or whatever it might be to cycle power to a hung up device or something that's failed or whatever it might be. As we know, in the tech support world, 90% of the world's problems can simply be solved by turning it off, turning it back in. So if you can do that with your feet on the floor and still sitting on the couch in your pajamas and make that happen and not have to spend any time and money to go and rectify things, that's what ICT is all about. And being able to receive status alarms by text, by email, by whatever method is that you choose, allows you to have that heads up, that visibility, and make whatever adjustments you need to keep your system up and running. We can disconnect non-critical devices when operating in backup battery mode. So if there's a lightning strike at a site or a blackout or a brownout or a power failure or whatever it might be, we can automatically switch you over to your backup battery systems in less than one cycle, which in many cases means there's not that blip there that other vendors experience. So when they're switching over, there's a power shortage for whatever small length of time, and that causes some radios to cycle power or turn off and turn back on and glitch and all those sorts of things. We don't have that. We can determine the method in which you want to have specific items drop off to keep your critical communications and your critical loads up and running and do that switch over in all less than a cycle. So again, nothing's glitching, nothing's failing. There's no problems inside that you're going to have to go out and deal with because of a power switch over and whatnot. We maintain that network visibility by using a very simple GUI, Graphical User Interface. And I'll show you an example of our GUI when we get into the DIN series a little later on. But it's very simple. All you need is an IP address in any browser on any device, and you're in. And it's super intuitive. It's super simple. Just sliding buttons or entering values and whatever it might be. And again, I'll show you the GUI in a little bit, but it's super easy, very simple to use. You don't need to be an IT guru and a genius and know all kinds of programming. It's super simple to utilize. And of course, we have SNMP and HTML and some other protocols to fit into an overall site solution. So if in your communication site, you've got a program or you're using an application to monitor each and every bit of the entire system and the site and what's going on there, we very easily integrate right into that as one of the screens, and you can control and monitor the power just as you can every other aspect of that site. So why us? We're providing that reliable power that's critical to keep networks up and running. we're able to take the power from utilities and generators and batteries and whatever it might be, and provide that to backhaul radios and access points, routers, switches, backup batteries, keep those charged and automatically switch over, as I mentioned earlier, and so on. So the bulk of our products and the ones that we're focused on here today, and you in this audience, we incorporate all this intelligent monitoring and control so that you can simply get an alarm, log in, make whatever adjustments you need to, set the appropriate settings for the application there, whether it's 48 volt or 24 or whatever it might be, and implement those settings. And very much then just fire and forget, and you're off to the races. You won't have to visit the site and make adjustments and deal with problems. So, some differentiators of ICT from some of the other power players out there in the world right now. As we all know, through COVID, we all experienced global supply issues and shortages and extended lead times and whatnot. We have conquered that for all but a couple of very specific products. We're back to, on average, a 4-week lead time across the breadth of our entire portfolio. We've got a pretty high FGI inventory right now. Often we can ship within a couple of days if we've got something in stock. The bulk of our high run products are running anywhere from only 1 to 2 week lead time. At most it's 4, unless it's one of these oddballs that we're still having issues prying away chips from Elon Musk or whatever it might be. But, and a 99% on time delivery rate over the past 2 years. That should actually probably be a little bit longer, maybe call it 4 years, taking into account some of the global issues and COVID that we all had to deal with. An average fail rate of 0.35, 1/3 of 1% over the entire lifetime of ICT, and only 1/5 of 1% over the last few years. So 99.8% of the time our products are fire and forget. You plug them in and away you go, and you never ever have an issue. And in those, 0.2% chances that something might be amiss, often those returns or replacements are lightning strikes or reverse polarity during connection and whatnot. At the end of the day, like I said, 99.8% of the time, our stuff just doesn't fail. So that's how we can back up our quality statements, and we've got MTBF numbers. If anybody ever wanted to see them, we can extract them from our engineering department, but the bulk of them are well over 2 million hours. So pretty damn impressive. Our rectifiers, we don't derate for the bulk of our systems. When we say something is 1,600 watts or 2,000 watts or whatever it might be, that's what it actually is. We don't play games with our specs, with side notes and derating and all this sort of stuff. So with us, what we say is what you're going to get in terms of power and output and so on. Installation and usage, very simple. From the time you're ripping the tape off the box to getting your fully remote monitored and controlled intelligent system up and running, it's typically done anywhere between 20 and 40 minutes. So it doesn't take an installer a lot of training time, a lot of study to be able to figure out how our stuff works. The installation is simple, wire connections are simple, with the GUI, with the programming, it's quite simple. We hear that repetitively from our customer base that, yeah, your stuff is pretty easy to use in terms of getting it installed and what comes in the box and what attributes it has and the features and the benefits. And we're up and running in no time at all. A lot of our competition, the install time is at least double that. So we're pretty proud of the fact that we can put things out there into the marketplace and pretty much anybody and their dog can get this thing up a tower and up and running. Some of the features in the bulk of our products, they're fully scalable, configurable, and polarity agnostic. So if you buy this system today that gives you this much power to run it to this many devices, if down the road you're adding more radios, you're adding more loads, you need more power and you need more outputs and protection and that, our stuff is very simple to add on to grow as your site grows and your system grows and your network grows. We can do that for you without having to rip and replace equipment and get that all up and running. It's fully configurable. We've got all the latest security and connectivity features, SNMP version 3, TLS 1.2, all those things that make us not a point of failure and not a target for hackers and folks who want to take down power grids and all that sort of stuff. We've got all the latest security and connectivity in there to make that thing. This orange highlighted line is ICT's big differentiator, what sets us apart from every other player in this marketplace. And that's the ability to individually monitor and control each connected device to our equipment individually. So it is that granular. If you're connecting 8 radios and a router and a backhaul and a switch and whatever it might be, all of those things can be monitored and controlled individually, get alarms individually. They have their own set points. They have their own thresholds, and you can program these, set these through the GUI individually, and then monitor and control them as you see fit and as required. And the ability to do that to that level to each connected device is what nobody else in this market can do right now, whereas we can and have been for well over a decade. Alarm reporting, things like the network watchdog to ensure that your Ethernet stays connected, even in blackouts and brownouts, and switching over to batteries or generators, whatever it might be, to maintain that connection there so you have that remote access, you have those alarms that aren't affected by blackouts and brownouts and lightning strikes and whatnot. That's integral, right? If you have a power outage and you lose Ethernet connectivity, then you aren't getting alarms, you don't know what's happening at site, and you're unsure what's going on until the customer complaints start rolling in and folks are complaining that they don't have their network or their connection or whatever it might be. We don't allow that to happen. Load shedding, like I mentioned before, we can decide and the customer can decide which devices they want to drop off at what point when they are on backup battery power and those batteries have been running a while and they're starting to deplete. We can drop off certain equipment at certain levels at certain times to ensure the most critical devices stay up and running for their absolute maximum amount of time. We can provide all kinds of advanced battery metrics, things like runtime remaining and state of charge. We can do remote battery testing from the comfort of your home or office. You don't have to go out into the bush in the middle of February with your dipsticks and your meters and measure battery levels and decide whether or not you have to change out your batteries. We can do that all through our GUI as well. So that's super convenient and handy. And anything where we're connecting batteries, we have an integrated LVD. So we have those set points where devices will disconnect and reconnect as that battery drains down or as it charges back up. So we're doing all of these things, and all these features are built into our products to prevent service disruptions and maintain that dependable, constant power. In terms of the product portfolio that ICT has, this isn't everything. We've got a whole wide variety. We've got a couple hundred SKUs, I think, at the end of the day. But in terms of some of our more popular and most beneficial product families that we've got a modular power series, which is a modular system where you have hot swappable power modules that will power share and keep your system up and running, even in that unlikely case where one was to fail for whatever reason. By having redundant systems and hot swappable, you keep the system up and running. You don't ever have to run to site to replace things, even if something was to go amiss. And it's got integrated battery connections with LVDs, load distribution, all those things that I talked about earlier. All of this is configurable and scalable, and we can a la carte it for you. So MBSI WAV can take a look at your application, say, all right, you've got this many devices that requires this amount of current, and it's whatever polarity, and they can design the system for you that could actually, like I mentioned before, grow with you as you add more devices or need more power down the line. We released last year a hybrid version of this, which is the same deal, a configurable, hot swappable, redundant system, but with a built-in converter. So you can have 2 voltages at site. So primarily you're working with 48 volt equipment, but you've got a couple of oddball pieces that are 12 or 24. You don't need a standalone converter that needs to be rack mounted, wired in line and all that stuff. We've got that built in right there for you in the system. So you can be working at dual voltages. Taking it down a notch from there, once you're looking at trying to save a few bucks, or you don't need that hot swappable redundant system because maybe it's in a location that's central or close, and anything that needs to happen can be done, by walking outdoors and heading down the path and making things change. So we can save a few bucks with things like Platinum Series and Pro Series, and whatever your application and price point and requirements are, we've got a rectifier system and a power solution that's going to fit your needs based on everything, including price. Pairing that with some of our distribution panels. So we do have standalone panels, whether it's fuse protected or circuit breaker protected, whether it's single voltage, whether it's dual voltage, whether you're looking for connections in the front, connections in the rear, based on how your stuff is rack mounted or in the shack or up the tower or whatever it might be. And we can range anywhere from 9 to 20 outputs. And again, find a solution that's best fitting or what your power requirements are, how many devices you've got, what the polarities are, and so on. So we've got some standalone devices for that as well. Inverters. So at a primarily DC site, oftentimes there's, again, 1 or 2 pieces of equipment, a network switch, for example, that might run off AC, whereas everything else is running off DC. We've got converters that can take that take that DC, convert it back to AC, and allow you to run those AC pieces of equipment that you've got on site as well. And then finally, the DIN rail solutions that we just released earlier this year. So for applications where not as much power is required, but perhaps mounting is an issue, you're working with a lot of DIN rail equipment already, enclosures are smaller and so on. We've now got a DIN series of products where we can just snap these onto the DIN rail and provide all the same attributes that we've got in our scalable, redundant, hot swappable systems. So same basic GUI layout, same functionality, but in a smaller DIN rail package. And like I mentioned before, we'll talk about that soon. So some of the classic product families, and I'll rip through these right quick. When we got started, like I said, back in the 80s, we were dealing with some two-way radio stuff. So we've just still got some 12-volt power supplies, DC UPS systems, some smaller inverters for converting DC back to AC. We've got a few step up and step down converters. So if you're working with different voltages and different applications, we can take your 48 volts and step it down to 12 or 24 or back up, whatever it might be. We've got some of those folks as well. These ones I mentioned just briefly a minute ago, some of our more popular product families that we've released in the last half decade or so, that modular, scalable, configurable, hot swappable, redundant system that I mentioned earlier, that's got either 7 or 1500 watt power modules. So you can get up to about 12,000 total watts if you had a high power application. Built-in LVDs, either single or dual backup battery connections. So you can have a primary backup battery, you can have a secondary line as well to maximize battery life in locations where blackouts might be common or lightning strikes are, or whatever it might be. We've got that. We've got all that individual load distribution that I mentioned earlier, the ability to remotely monitor and control any connected device. And we've got different sizes and flavors of these product families where you can connect 4 loads or 8 or 12 or whatever it might be, and individually protect them with their own sized circuit breakers and monitor them and control them and adjust your settings, cycle power, and all that good stuff. Platinum series I mentioned earlier, it's a 1U unit up to about 1600 total watts. It's also got integrated LVDs and those advanced battery metrics that I talked about before, and so on. And then we've got a lower cost Pro series, which doesn't have that Ethernet connectivity. It doesn't have IP addresses and the ability to remotely monitor and control, but we can still give you 1200 watts and a battery connection and all that. So again, we've got different product families for your application and what it is you need to power and how in tune and plugged in you want to be into that system. Distribution panels that I mentioned a little bit earlier, we have 3-stage battery chargers that use temperature compensated charging. Output power is up to 360 watts. So we do have some 3-stage charging stuff as well, along with some 2-stage charging as well. And then we've got some higher power inverters as well. So taking that DC, converting it back to AC to run your network switches or other AC equipment you might have on site. We've got some of those as well. In 2022, ICT released a few new products. We released that 1500 watt power module. So you can take any of our modular systems and effectively double the output power to it. Whereas before we had a 700 watt module that you could configure whatever it might be to get yourself 2800 watts or 3600 or whatever it might have been. Now we can effectively double that. So we can get you anywhere up to about 12,000 watts with these hot swappable power modules. That hybrid series that I mentioned before. So again, you can be working with 2 voltages at site. Primarily, you might be working with 48, but you might have a 12-volt piece of gear that is legacy, or that's just what it is, and you've got to work with dual voltages. We could provide that all right in the same chassis for you as well. We do have a polarity reversing converter that we released. So in applications where you're dealing with both negative 48 and positive 48 volts, which is sometimes the case where some gear is specifically taking this polarity and the other is taking the specific opposite polarity, you don't have to get a whole standalone separate system to run the negative stuff versus the positive stuff. We can simply just convert that polarity from negative to positive or vice versa for you and keep all your other gear running. We released a larger distribution panel that has 20 outputs. All the models before we sort of capped out and tapped out at 12. We've now got a 20 output. So if you need 14 today and you're thinking you might grow to another 4 or whatnot, we do have distribution panels with more outputs to be able to power all your equipment and meet all your needs. And finally, just earlier this year, we did release this DIN rail mounted product. So we've got a power supply piece and a distribution panel piece, and I'll talk about them a little bit more in another slide or two. But again, it's universal AC inputs like all of our equipment is. It's either 48 or 24 volts, and we've got a distribution panel. So all the goodness in our older models, our Series 2 and our Series 3 distribution panels, that if you have used that gear, you probably come to know and love. We've got all that now in a DIN rail form factor with that individual monitoring and control of each connected device that nobody else in the marketplace has. So the power supply, there are several other folks that offer DIN rail rectifier systems. Well, we're not unique there, but where we are unique is pairing that with our distribution panel and having that connectivity and the reliability and the individual right down to the granular level of connected devices being able to get alarms and set thresholds, cycle power, and so on. So that is new to us, that's new to you, that's new to the market. Nobody else has that right now, and we're quite excited to be able to launch this product with partners like MBSI WAV and get it into your hands. So I'll cruise through these very quickly because I've touched on them a couple of times. This was our new 1500 watt power module that we released, higher power, and here's some specs and all the fancy data sheet information that you'd be able to pull. This is our hybrid series. This model is a 1U unit, so it's giving you a couple different output voltages with different power modules and circuit breakers and things that you can apply to that to get dual voltages at a site that is redundant, that is hot swappable, that is scalable, and so on. Our 2U version of that effectively just allows you to double your number of outputs, double your amount of power, and still get 2 output voltages at site, your 48 and your 24, or your 12, or whatever it might be, all in a single chassis, all that's controlled through a single GUI, all the different aspects, the power, the battery, the load, and so on, all within a single unit. This is the DIN series that we released earlier this year. So again, like I mentioned, it comes with 2 parts. There's a power supply, a rectifier component, and a distribution panel piece. Both of these are DIN railed. So the power supply will allow for temperature compensated battery charging, has adjustable current limits. It's got an internal LVD, like all of our equipment does, where we're using to charge batteries. It has a very simple RJ45 communications link over to our PDU. And this is where we can do that remote monitoring and control of each connected device, much like we can do in all of our other pieces of equipment that I talked about. But again, in that DIN rail, smaller enclosure, up on the tower form factor, or whatever it might be. The PDU will take either 12, 24, 48 volts. It'll take, that's its output. The input voltage can be anywhere between 10 to 60. We can have up to 60 amps continuous output through these. There are 6 outputs. Each of them are loaded with 15 amp GMT fuses. You can run 12 amps continuous through each and every one of them. And again, like I mentioned, be able to monitor, control, cycle, get alarms for each. We also have built into this digital alarm inputs. So you can also connect in things like your external sensors, door, smoke, fire, water, whatever it might be. We can run that through our GUI and connect into this, and you're able to get alarms and check statuses of external sensors like that as well. So this is, like I mentioned, for smaller applications, smaller enclosures, tighter spaces, places where you're not rack mounting or you have smaller enclosures or your equipment is already on a DIN rail and so on. So this does fit in the wireless broadband world. We're also looking at this going into the IoT world, into SCADA for remote monitoring stations and so on. So this is an overview of these two products that we released earlier this year. Again, a rectifier component and a standalone distribution panel, DIN rail mounted, 6 outputs, 15 amps each, 60 amps total out of this that you can remotely monitor and control. Just as an example of what the GUI looks like, and this is fairly similar to the bulk of our other equipment. And if you've played with our stuff before, this layout will look very, very similar to you. So for example, on the left-hand side here is just a snapshot of our GUI that can be accessed on any tablet, computer, iPhone, Android device, whatever it might be. Again, all you simply need is the IP address of that device, put it into a browser, log in, set up your admin and your controls and whatnot of who can access what aspects of this. But some pieces and parts of this that you'll see on your phone or your laptop, your iPad, or whatever it might be. You've got a status and control page that looks a little something like this, where you can see each connected device. Is it enabled? Is it disabled? How much voltage and current is being drawn through this? What the battery metrics are, state of charge, runtime remaining, whether or not your LVD is open and closed, what alarms have been triggered here. This is where your data logging is. You can toggle the outputs here as well and get all those metrics. For example, again, on the output setup page, here's where you can give names to each connected device. You can set that load shedding that I talked about before, where if you are on backup battery power and it's starting to drain, you can set what the thresholds are for certain devices to drop off. If the battery drops below this voltage, disconnect this device. When power comes back, that battery starts to charge, reconnect that device, and so on. You can set your alarms of if there's too much current, if there's not enough current being drawn, what those set points are, how you're going to get those alarms. Is it by text? Is it by email? And so on. And a very simple, easy. Here's another example of the alarm setup screen. So what are you going to get in terms of alarms?
Sorry, Brian, your audio cut out there for a few seconds. Do you mind just hitting the rewind button for about 30, 45 seconds?
Yeah, no
we
problem.
lost
Actually,
you there.
Yeah, just now I had a thing pop up saying my internet connection's down. Odd. Where did I leave off, Cody? Was it here?
Yeah, just kind of on the tail end, I think.
Okay, so yeah, just quickly taking another go at this. This is an example of our GUI. We've got a snapshot of the screen here on the left side. And just as an example of a couple of the menu items that we can deal with, status and control. Here's where you can get the status of your connected devices, toggle them, get your fuse status, how much current and voltage is being drawn, alarms, data logging here, whatever alarms have been received, there's a log you can go in and take a look at and say, all right, I got this alarm and that alarm and this alarm. It was cleared at this point, it was affected at this point, and so on. Your voltage and current levels, along with the ambient temperature, for utilizing a temperature probe, that can all be done in this example. Another one, here's the output setup page, where you can name each connected device, set its values, the thresholds for your disconnect or your reconnect points. If we are in load shedding mode, where if you are on backup batteries and the power is, or the voltage is draining out of your battery, you can keep the critical ones up by disconnecting the secondary or the tertiary loads, however you've categorized them, and have them disconnected X voltage and reconnected Y voltage when power comes back and that battery charges up, and so on. And alarms, how you're going to receive them. Is it by text? Is it by email? Is it data logging in this system or your site management system? All that can be configured here as well. And another example, and there are a few other pages here, but I won't go through them all and bore you But in terms of alarm setups, how you're going to get them, what kind of alarms you're going to get, is it under or over voltage? Is it over or under current? Your digital alarm configuration, so the smoke, door, water, fire, whatever external sensors here, this is where you would format them and connect them, and how you're going to receive those alarms and what will go on there. So that's a snapshot of what we've got here in terms of the GUI and how it's configured and how it's used and how it's monitored. And if you'd like to dive deeper into this, Cody or I would be happy to take you through a spin of our online demo, and it can be reached at that URL there. So you can actually get in there, click buttons with a dummy set, and see what happens as you change your thresholds and cycle power and enable and disable outputs and so on. So all of our gear has online demonstrations that are on our website, and that's the URL if you want to get in and see what that one looks like. So just to summarize in terms of this presentation before we get into the multitude and plethora of questions I'm sure that there are, ICT has been around since 1986. Like I mentioned before, we've established ourselves as a reputable power solution for all kinds of marketplaces, LMR, fixed wireless broadband, SCADA, IoT now that we're getting into, LANs, WANs, whatever it might be. Our products have unique and individual features that a lot of other vendors don't have, and in some cases, none have, that provide significant benefits to the customers. Our product design and manufacturing quality are critical. We're always looking for our highest efficiency, the highest MTBF numbers, the highest length of how long these products will last, because it's important, right? If you're going to spend X amount of dollars on a high quality power system, you want to know that it's reliable, high quality, and it'll last a decade or more. That's what we look at when we're designing and releasing and producing and manufacturing and supporting our products. Our pre and post sales support is recognized across the industry. Every time I visit someone or I talk to someone or I go to a show or whatever it might be, and I think there's more of this now during COVID and post-COVID, our customer service and support, I believe, and I've heard this externally, is second to none. The time in which we'll get back to you and answer your questions and deal with your concern and support your products is unparalleled, I think, in the marketplace right now. And finally, our continual and customer-driven design process, developing, manufacturing, releasing, supporting these new products is known throughout the world. We were primarily a North American and an American continent manufacturer, but now we've really gone global. We're selling a lot into Europe and Asia and Australia and so on, and interacting with folks like yourselves and our channel partners like MBSI WAV, and hearing what the concerns are and what they like and what they don't like and what's missing and what they need and so on, getting that feedback and putting that through our company and our design group and our engineers and our product advisory committee and all that. That's vital in terms of releasing the right products for what it is that you folks need to do with power, and get it out there to you as quick and reliably as we can. If you want to get a hold of me, there's my contact information up at the top. If you have technical support questions or customer service or sales, whatever it is, here's a few email addresses that you can get a hold of all the folks here at ICT at. And since we're globally renowned at our customer service, we'll get back to you quick with answers that you need. Our website's there listed. Like I mentioned before, all of our product families will be here. All of our online demonstrations of our GUI are on here if you want to get in and take a rip through it and see how it works and what it looks like and so on. And if you want to go old school and get a hold of me or us by phone, there's a couple of phone numbers as well. So with that, I will assume everybody's still wide awake and itching to ask questions. Cody, I'll turn it over to you if there are any, if any were collected, and I'll do my best to answer any questions there might be.
Sure thing. Yeah, we got a couple here. One was self-answered already, but we're gonna run through it anyway. Just referring to the DIN rail unit here, is the power supply available as AC input?
Yes, the power supply is AC in, DC out. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, Martin had already found the answer there, but he did ask another question here. Does the power supply support other batteries beside lead acid, lithium ion phosphate, for example?
So the answer is yes, but much like improv, where you get to go yes and, I will go yes, but. So yes, it does. With lithium, primarily, what you have to look for is, and every one of them are different, and this is why it's hard to just say yes. There's a drop-down menu item, you click on that and away you go, like you can in some of our other products. You have to take a look at the battery manufacturer's specs in terms of their own battery management systems and their own LVDs, and what are the disconnect and reconnect points for them. Almost every one of them has one that is slightly different. So the answer is yes, but we really should be consulting with the battery manufacturers, with folks like MBSI WAV, and me and our group here are more than willing to do that legwork for you and figure out what fits where. So yes, but you have to be diligent in looking for ones that will work with thresholds that we can meet, and ones that have thresholds that work with the system. So in our Platinum series of products, for example, it's just a simple drop down, right? You just change in the GUI from lead acid to lithium, and everything runs along hunky-dory. With our modular systems and with the new DIN rail, it will work. We do just need to double check battery management specs, thresholds, disconnect points, make sure that theirs are not too wild and wacky and out of range. And if everything fits, then the answer is yes. So that was a very long-winded yes, but.
All right, now we're getting a couple more questions rolling in. So thanks, Brian, for that. So has ICT ever considered a second network interface for out-of-band management across the network, or access, sorry?
Say that again?
So has ICT ever thought of putting on a second network interface for out-of-band management?
That is a question I don't have an answer to.
Just more of a comment, I guess, but
yeah,
maybe something that we could circle back and yeah, I'm not sure if you'd have to, talk to your engineering department if that's something they've ever considered, but
that's exactly where I'm going with this. So whoever
cellular.
Whoever asked that fantastic question, if you'd like to send it to Cody, or Cody can copy and paste or screenshot or whatever and shoot it through to me. I don't have an answer for you, but folks that live downstairs in the engineering department that are much wiser than I will have an answer. So I can get that for you and put that out to whoever asked it and anybody else who's curious. Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. So Chris, we'll circle back with you on that. All right, so can you use the GUI to power cycle with auto on after 5 seconds? This would be so you can lose IP connection and it comes back up automatically.
Yes, one of the GUI settings in DIN rail, along with our other products, is how does, so yes, if you are power cycling, how does it come back? Does it come back to its last state? Does it come back to open? Does it come back to closed, on, off, whatever? And you can also set your timings in terms of, yes, that delay of how long things will take as they cycle down and turn back up. And we can do that with multiple loads. So if you had to cycle the entire bus, for example, the whole thing just went kablooey, you can set it so that, load 1 comes back after 0 seconds, load 2 comes after 5, load 2 comes after 10. So you don't have that large inrush of current. But yes, there are those settings of what state will it come back to and the time delay in which they come back. So yes.
All right, awesome. Okay, well that's all we have for questions. If anybody has any last minute ones here, feel free to pop them in. But I will. I'll get on the outro here and we'll let everybody go.
Hey, Cody, just before I let you do the wrap up.
Yeah.
I'm just taking a look. I'm just going through the comments here real quick.
So we got a great DIN rail product. What would be the equivalent in a rack mount?
Yeah, great DIN rail product. What would be equivalent in the rack mount? That would depend on which features and benefits you're looking for. So I'll just take you back to this slide real quick. It's going to be one of these. I hope my little screen thing's not on. It's going to be one of these three. So if you're looking for a hot swappable redundant system that has battery connections and multiple outputs, it's going to be the modular series. And depending on how much power you'll require and how many devices you're connecting, it would either be this 1U modular or the 2U ultra. If you were looking at not having it being hot swappable and redundant, which the DIN rail is not, it is this, or it would be a combination of the Platinum series here, along with a distribution panel here. So again, that would be a 2U solution, but it would give you that remote connectivity and monitoring and control and power levels as that. If you wanted to dumb it down and you weren't using any remote monitoring and control, it would be a Pro series plus however many outputs you would have on a distribution panel. So it would be some combination of that, but in all likelihood, you're probably looking at a 1U modular system that has X amount of power, battery connections, low distribution, and so on. That's likely the closest alternative in a non-DIN rail 1U format.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. Okay. You said you were just poking around in the comments there in the chat. Brian, was there anything else you wanted to comment on?
No, sir. Over to you.
I think so. We're good to go. Okay.
Good to go.
Well, thank you. Thank you all to the attendees. Thanks for the questions that were coming in and comments. We certainly appreciate that. Yeah, thank you everybody for attending. Appreciate your time as always. Please get in contact with your sales rep here at MBSI WAV, or even Brian directly at ICT. His information is there. If you want any additional information on any of the products covered today, whether that's specs, recommendations, if you want to have more of a one-on-one discussion about it for your specific needs, happy to do that. So just keep in mind in the future, MBSI WAV, we're going to continue to do solution-based webinars. We have road shows. We have all kinds of things going on for the remainder of the year. So we always make sure to let our customer base know when we're hosting these things, whether they're virtual or in person. So stay tuned for those. And yeah, appreciate the time and enjoy the rest of your week, everyone. Thanks, Brian. Really appreciate the time.
Thanks, everyone. I appreciate yours. Let's go sell some product, Cody.
All right, let's do it, man. Cheers. Cheers, everyone.
All right.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.